Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror mystery movie called The Vault. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the Centurion Trust Bank's kitchen, where assistant manager Ed Mass is getting his coffee. He seems to be dealing with some trauma, as flashes of gunfire flicker in his mind. Ed nonetheless jolts himself back to reality and gets ready for a busy day ahead. Just as he steps into the main hall, Detective Logger also enters. The latter deposits his salary into a savings account and quickly heads back to his job. Everything seems normal. Security guards monitor the floor, clerks handle paperwork, and customers wait their turn. It is also revealed that a fire has been raging in a nearby factory. This is why the sounds of sirens can be heard from the streets outside. Soon afterwards, the bank manager calls a young woman named Leia into his office. It turns out that she is here to give an interview for the post of a teller. Her resume lists work at large corporations, but there's a gap in her employment history. Leia explains that she traveled extensively and taught English to children at a parish in Mexico, but due to a relative's illness, she had to return and is now trying to get a job. Outside in the main hall, a woman with a teardrop tattoo on her face starts creating a scene. A middle-aged teller tries her best to control the situation, but the woman grows increasingly hostile, berating the bank for charging illegal penalties. Meanwhile, the manager, unaware of what's happening outside, continues the interview. He confides in Leia that in the past year they have had 3 tellers leave the job. Several employees apparently think the bank is haunted, as they have seen or heard spooky things. At this moment, head teller Susan Cromwell confronts the disruptive visitor. She points out that the woman is not even a client of their bank. Just then, 3 firefighters enter the building and lock the doors from inside. Leia nods to the irate visitor, who suddenly attacks the security guard. He collapses from a hard blow to the face, and everyone struggles to comprehend the chaos. Leia then draws a gun and tells the assistant manager to comply, or else she will blow his head off. It is obvious that an elaborate bank robbery plan is now underway. However, the guard at the main door only sees the customer being violent towards the other security guard, so he contacts the local authorities via his walkie-talkie and relays that there has been slight unrest at the Centurion Trust Bank. He then rushes towards the counter, only to be knocked out cold by one of the firefighters. The other 2 take everyone hostage and cover their heads with bags. In the meantime, the disruptive visitor, who turns out to be Leia's sister V, collects phones from the captives. The second firefighter, Cyrus, sprays over the security cameras with paint. This is when the local police contact the security guard who made the distress call earlier, but the third firefighter, named Michael, forces the guard to assure them that everything is under control. However, Detective Logger, who is on duty in a nearby neighborhood, decides to check the bank. He is on his way when suddenly his radio emits a patchy, unclear message. It is the voice of a man who reports that a robbery is in progress at the Centurion Trust Bank. The man says that the robbers are taking hostages and pleads for the police to be sent. Inside the bank, the first firefighter, whose name is Kramer, orders the tellers to open the vault, and if they don't, he'll say racist stuff. They hesitate at first, but eventually agree to do as told. Meanwhile, in the hall, the bank manager attempts to flee, but he's quickly shot in the knee. He begins to writhe and scream in pain, forcing Michael to knock him unconscious. Michael then removes his mask and begins dressing the wound while apologizing to the victim. It is obvious that he doesn't want to harm anyone. Back in the vault, Susan finally opens the large safe, only to reveal that it contains a small amount of cash. Kramer then angrily grabs the money, comes out to the hall, and shouts that there is only $70,000 here. All the robbers are dismayed at this revelation. They have put their lives at risk and hurt people for such a tiny amount of money. I'd tell them to cry about it, but V's already got that covered. While Leia wants to quickly make an exit, V and the others refuse to leave empty-handed. As they are busy arguing, a hostage unexpectedly offers his help. He introduces himself as the assistant manager and claims to know the bank inside out. To prove his sincerity, the man reveals the location of an emergency alarm button and advises them to disable it quickly. He says that if the daily transaction database isn't verified with the manager's PIN, the alarm will be activated. He then promises to assist the robbers if they ensure no one else gets hurt. An increasingly desperate V agrees and removes the bag from his head. It is revealed that the man is Ed Mass. mass, the same person we saw in the first scene. Following this, Ed quickly disables the alarm and even reveals the location of additional cash. He says there is a vault, built about 60 to 70 years ago in the basement. Ed claims that it contains $6 million in cash, and even hands them the keys to the basement door. Shortly afterwards, V and Kramer head to the basement, instructing the others to monitor them through the surveillance cameras. According to their plan, Michael will also later descend to the basement. He is tasked with creating a hole in the bank's sewage pipeline, which will serve as their escape route. For now, Leia escorts Ed to a separate office from which she can observe the surveillance monitors. V and Kramer also reach the basement and locate the door leading to the old vault. Back upstairs, Michael locks all the hostages in the new vault and stands guard himself. Everyone remains silent for a while, but soon the hostages begin to grow uneasy. Susan speaks up first, pleading to be escorted to the restroom downstairs. In the meantime, Kramer and V discover the vault, which has a huge metal door fitted with wheel locks. Kramer admits that it will take at least 20 minutes to break through it. V thus steps away to explore the basement, while he begins working on the door. Suddenly, the building's lights start to flicker, but nobody pays too much attention to that. Leia asks Cyrus to keep an eye on Ed while she checks on the other hostages. She also takes a peek outside and notices police cars parked in front of the bank. Meanwhile, Michael escorts Susan to the restroom, and she tries to engage him in conversation, but he is too nervous to talk to her and simply stands nearby. In the basement, Kramer diligently works on the vault door and it begins to yield. As for V, she is still exploring the basement when she notices a human-like figure in one of the old storage rooms. Elsewhere, Michael is bringing Susan back to the new vault when Leia sees him. She scolds him for deviating from the plan and orders him to stick to the schedule. Michael thus heads downstairs to another part of the basement to cut into the pipeline for their escape route. On his way down, he comes across V, who looks to be perturbed by something. She reveals that she saw something or someone downstairs, which made her feel uneasy. V then heads upstairs, leaving Michael to prepare their escape way. Moments later, Cyrus takes over guarding the hostages while the sisters monitor Kramer's progress in the basement. He seems to have successfully unlocked the vault, but the lights suddenly go out. Kramer, who is about to enter the vault, notices two figures with filthy bags over their heads in the corridor. The number of figures before him multiplies just as the flickering lights grow more intense. On the other hand, Leia and V, who are watching through the surveillance monitor, witness a different scene. They can see no one but Kramer, who now appears to be searching for his weapon. The sisters watch in horror as Kramer is dragged into an old storage room. Michael, who is also in the basement, hears his blood-curdling screams moments later. Confused by what's happening, Leia asks Cyrus to count the number of hostages. The lights flicker again, and the door of the new vault slams shut. This means that the hostages, as well as Cyrus, are now trapped inside. Rather spookily, the door from the main hall to the basement also gets locked. As the two sisters try to open it up, Cyrus begins to see something strange inside the new vault. He notices a person in a white mask among the captives, prompting him to grab his shotgun. Soon after, a group of captives in filthy bags appears out of nowhere and advances on him. The person in the white mask then shoves the shotgun into Cyrus's mouth. Similarly, in the basement, several unknown figures begin to repeatedly stab Kramer. These ghosts have guns and knives. In the main hall, the lights come back on, and V finally manages to open the door. Leia, on the other hand, goes to check the new vault and comes across a strange sight. Cyrus is nowhere to be seen, but the hostages are seated exactly as before. Back in the basement, Michael discovers Kramer tied to a chair with his eyes brutally gouged out. He seems to be pleading with someone, begging them not to do something, but seconds later, he suddenly grabs his drill and punctures his own skull. Upstairs, Leia is confronting Ed when the phone abruptly rings. She answers, and Detective Logger, who is on the other side, demands to speak to whoever is in charge. Leia responds that she will leave all the hostages in 30 minutes if the police don't do anything stupid. She then tries to determine who tipped off the police and concludes it must have been the head teller, Susan. Following this, Leia goes to Susan and inquires about what's happening in the basement. She wants to know if it's something supernatural or just a trap, although hesitant at first. Susan eventually opens up and recounts an incident from 1982. Apparently, a deranged man tried to rob the bank and held all the employees hostage for days, but the police refused to comply with his demands, and the robber thus made the employees shoot each other. Ever since that incident, no one goes to the basement of the bank, not even the security guards. Obviously, Leia doesn't believe the story and threatens to disfigure Susan. Couldn't you just hurt me? No, I'm gonna disfigure you! This tense moment is interrupted by Michael, who seems to be shaken. He tells Leia about Kramer's death and insists they leave as soon as possible, as something is wrong with this bank. At this moment, V also appears with a bag full of money. Leia quickly informs her about Kramer's death and the police presence outside. She then examines the cash, but shockingly finds that every single one of them is from 1982. Well, that makes sense if no one's gone down there since then. Why's that a twist? Realizing that the situation is spiraling out of control, Leia interrogates the guard. She is trying to understand the scenario outside and what the police will do next, but the guard advises her to release the hostages and save herself. Following this, Leia heads back to the office where she had interrogated Susan. Before she can ask anything, she notices the indicator for an outgoing call on the office phone. She picks up the receiver and hears a distress call from someone. A patchy, unclear male voice reports that a robbery is underway at the Centurion Trust Bank. This is exactly the same call that Detective Logger had heard earlier. Meanwhile, Michael returns to the basement and finishes cutting into the pipeline. He is wrapping up his work when suddenly he hears someone nearby crying for help. Michael rushes towards the sound and finds an injured woman on the floor, but she unexpectedly transforms into a charred corpse and reaches out toward him. A terrified Michael has no option but to flee from the spot. Sometime later, V heads downstairs and sees Michael pouring gasoline on the floor. He pleads with her to escape the bank, but refuses to leave himself. A visibly emotional V then hugs him tightly and finds the exit, while Michael sets the corridor on fire. He is attempting to block the escape route from the ghostly pursuers, but also unwittingly activates the fire alarm. Upstairs, Ed tells Leia that now the police will be forced to come in. He begs her to let all the hostages go, and rather surprisingly, Leia obliges. She releases the assistant manager and hands him a knife to free the other hostages. Leia then grabs the bag of money and heads to the basement. The bank's security officer begs her not to go down there, but she ignores his warnings. Shortly afterwards, police storm the building and fire at the escaping Leia. She falls on the staircase, injuring her leg, but continues towards the pipeline. On the other hand, all the hostages flee, except the assistant manager Ed, who silently stands there. As Leia reaches the pipe opening, she suddenly hears Michael's voice and heads to the old vault, but the doors begin to close and now she's trapped with several ghosts who have filthy bags on their heads. Just when all hope seems to be lost, Michael arrives in the nick of time to pull her out. He then tells her to run and stays behind to hold off the ghosts. Michael, what are you doing? Unfortunately, before Leia can enter the escape route, she is attacked by the man in the white mask and several other ghosts. Michael then plays his final trick. He sacrifices himself and ignites the entire surrounding area. This gives Leia enough time to safely escape through the pipe. The scene then abruptly shifts to the next day as Leia drives down a dirt road. She is listening to a radio report about the armed robbery and the fire at the Centurion Trust Bank. The report states that all the robbers involved died in the blaze. Shortly afterwards, she stops her vehicle on the way and picks up her sister V. Elsewhere at the police station, Detective Logger continues his investigation. He reviews footage of the robbers' deaths where only they were visible. No one can identify the assistant manager who guided the robbers to the old vault. Witnesses try to recall details about the man, who seemed to have knowledge of the bank's security system, but all of them realize that he never told anybody his name. Susan, who has worked at the bank for 10 years, doesn't remember such an employee. However, she suddenly recognizes him in a photo on the wall of the police station. Susan points to the photo, identifying him as the man who had helped the robbers. Detective Logger, however, dismisses her claims and says it is not possible. In a shocking twist, it is revealed that there was a ghost in this movie full of ghosts. The man, Ed Mass, was one of the victims of the 1982 robbery. He was the one who made the infamous call heard by so many people before being shot on the road. road, and now he marauds the land as the ghost of James Franco's career. In the meantime, Leia's car is broken down, forcing V to examine the engine. The sisters are trying to figure out what's happening when suddenly the man in the mask grabs V from behind. I guess the fire allowed the ghosts to escape. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.